Greetings. My name is George Thow. I'm an minister's assistant at the Enmanji Buddhist Temple and a member of the temple board. And would like to take a few minutes to give you some background regarding our temple. As you look around our Hondo, main hall in Japanese, you will see many architectural and artistic expressions of why our temple exists, which is to be a place for the cultivation of a true understanding of the Buddhist teachings in general, and specifically the way for ordinary workaday people like ourselves to become awakened through the teachings of what is known as Shin Buddhism. Our temple got its start back in the late 1920s when Shin Buddhist followers in the emerging Japanese-American community of Sonoma County formed a fellowship. By the early 1930s, this had become an organized and incorporated religious institution. Our very distinctive Hondo, with medieval Japanese exterior and Chinese interior motifs, was the part of the Japan Pavilion at the 1933 World's Fair in Chicago that housed exhibits of the South Manchurian Railway Company. Delivered disassembled in 1934, it was reassembled on this spot by temple volunteers and friends. And on April 15, 1934, was formally dedicated. To this day, we at Enmanji regard that date as the real beginning of our temple's existence. A very dark chapter in our country's World War II history was enacted in the spring of 1942, when all persons of Japanese ancestry were expelled from the West Coast and confined in inland prison camps. Enmanji was closed and suffered some acts of vandalism during this period. But strong ties existed between the Japanese American community and the rest of Sonoma County. The sheriff's office and people living nearby kept an eye on the temple. And then it happened. In November 1943, someone unknown pushed an incendiary device through one of the windows in an attempt to burn the temple down. An alert citizen spotted this in time, and the fire was put out before it could consume the entire building. After the war ended and people returned home, the fire damage was repaired, except for this one spot left untouched as a reminder of how close the temple had come to being destroyed. What followed after the arson attack was a wonderful act of good neighborliness. The Youth Fellowship at the Sebastopol Community Church, on their own initiative, mounted a fire guard around the temple for the next few weeks. The plaque you see here was installed inside the temple in honor of these young people for their act of decency and kindness. By this time, rationality was returning to Washington, D.C., and the military exclusion orders eventually would be rescinded effective January 1st, 1945. When Japanese Americans returned to Sonoma County, they would find that neighbors had safeguarded their property and possessions. Restarting regular life and reactivation of Enmanji would still take time and effort, but would be less arduous than was the case elsewhere on the West Coast. Now, the name of our temple in Chinese letters is inscribed on a large signboard mounted above the entrance and is written in the old right-to-left style. The first character, En, means garden. The second character, Man, means fulfillment. The third character, Ji, means Buddhist temple. The name may be best rendered in English as the Temple of the Garden of Fulfillment, a place for those earnestly seeking to follow the Buddhist path to experience the fulfillment of human potential. to experience in this world and in this life the assurance of emancipation from the seemingly endless cycle of birth and death. Enmanji is affiliated with the Buddhist Churches of America, founded in 1899 and the oldest organized Buddhist denomination in the continental United States. The Buddhist Churches of America, in turn, is affiliated with Hompa Honganji, or as it is popularly called, Nishi Honganji, one of the largest, if not the largest, Buddhist denominations in Japan. Now, all this institutional structure exists because of the teachings of Shinran, one of the great Buddhist teachers who emerged in Japan during the 12th and 13th centuries. His teachings laid the foundation for Shin Buddhism, more formally known as Jodo Shinshu, the true or unqualified teaching of the Pure Land, which is the school of Buddhism followed by our temple. At the center of our tradition is Amida Buddha, the Buddha of immeasurable compassion and immeasurable wisdom. In common with all schools of Buddhism, Jodo Shinshu affirms that all beings can attain enlightenment and thus achieve Buddhahood. When we gather here in this hall, we recite the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, which is the affirmation that we entrust ourselves to the immeasurable wisdom and compassion that is Amida. Our tradition has no monasteries, nor any of the disciplines or practices that one may associate with Buddhism. Rather, it is a tradition of and for ordinary, everyday people. By saying the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, we seek to become mindful of Amida's great compassion and thus awaken to the truth of the Buddha's teachings here and now in our own